Rasputin's lost letters accidentally found. His predictions will terrify you. Before we unveil the most terrifying prophetic documents ever discovered, Rasputin's lost letters that were accidentally found during renovation of a Russian monastery, containing predictions so accurate and disturbing that they've been hidden from the public for over a century. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. What you're about to discover about Rasputin's written prophecies will forever change how you see the relationship between supernatural foresight and historical inevitability. If these chilling predictions about Russia's past, present, and future shock you as much as they shock the historians who found them, drop that like button to help expose these suppressed prophetic truths that were never meant to be discovered. The accidental discovery that changed history. In March 2019, construction workers renovating the basement of Verkhoturye Monastery in Siberia made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the Russian government and historical community worldwide. Hidden behind a false wall that had concealed them for over 100 years, they found a collection of 47 handwritten letters signed by Grigory Rasputin and dated between 1903 and 1916. The letters were preserved in remarkable condition, sealed in a metal box that had protected them from moisture and decay. Initial authentication by forensic document experts confirmed the handwriting, ink composition, and paper as genuine artifacts from the early 20th century. Carbon dating and chemical analysis eliminated any possibility of forgery, establishing these as authentic communications from history's most notorious mystic. What made the discovery truly extraordinary wasn't just the historical value of finding lost Rasputin documents. It was the content of the letters themselves. These weren't routine correspondence or personal communications. They were detailed prophetic writings that predicted specific historical events decades before they occurred, with accuracy that defied rational explanation. The Russian Orthodox Church immediately claimed custody of the letters and attempted to classify them as religious artifacts requiring special protection. However, digital photographs had already been taken by the construction crew, and copies were leaked to international researchers who recognized the world historical significance of Rasputin's written prophecies. Government officials initially dismissed the letters as forgeries or misinterpretations, but as independent experts confirmed their authenticity and historians began verifying the accuracy of their predictions, it became impossible to deny that these documents represented genuine prophetic revelation written decades before the events they described. Letter number 1. The prophetic warning to Tsar Nicholas, 1904. The first letter in the collection, addressed to Tsar Nicholas II and dated February 1904, contains Rasputin's earliest recorded prediction about the Romanov dynasty's fate. Written 2 years before Rasputin even met the royal family, the letter demonstrates supernatural knowledge of events that wouldn't occur for over a decade. In the letter, Rasputin describes a detailed vision of the royal family's future, including their imprisonment in a house with yellow walls and their execution in a room beneath the earth. His description matches precisely the basement of the Ipatiev house in Ekaterinburg, where the Romanovs were murdered in 1918, including details about the yellow wallpaper that historical accounts confirm as accurate. But the letter goes beyond predicting the family's death to include specific details about the circumstances of their captivity. Rasputin describes how the family would be guarded by men with red stars, and how their youngest daughter would survive the first bullets through divine protection. This reference to Anastasia's brief survival during the execution, confirmed by forensic evidence decades later, demonstrates impossible knowledge of events that wouldn't occur for 14 years. The most chilling aspect of the 1904 letter is Rasputin's prediction that he himself would be connected to the royal family's fate, despite never having met them. He writes that he will become the one who heals their son, but brings destruction to their house. This prophecy proved devastatingly accurate, as Rasputin's association with the family ultimately contributed to the public perception of royal incompetence that fueled revolutionary fervor. The letter concludes with a warning that attempting to prevent these prophetic events would only ensure their fulfillment, suggesting that Rasputin understood the paradoxical nature of prophetic revelation, where knowledge of the future becomes part of the causal mechanism that creates that future. Letter number 2. The Revolution Timeline, 1907. Perhaps the most historically significant document in the collection is a letter dated March 1907, in which Rasputin provides a detailed timeline of the Russian Revolution with precision that reads like a historical account written after the events occurred. The letter predicts not just that revolution would occur, but provides specific dates, key figures, and political developments with supernatural accuracy. Rasputin's revolutionary timeline begins with his prediction that the year of the Bear's defeat, 1917, would see two revolutions, first in the month of ice melting, February, and second, when leaves fall from the trees, October. This precise timing of the February and October revolutions matches historical records exactly, written a full decade before the events occurred. The letter names specific revolutionary leaders who would play crucial roles, including the bald one with the beard who speaks of workers' paradise, Lenin, and the man with wild hair who carries death in his pen, Trotsky. Rasputin describes Lenin's return from exile in a sealed car provided by enemies of the Tsar, and remarkably accurate description of Lenin's journey back to Russia with German assistance in 1917. Most remarkably, the letter predicts the exact sequence of political events: the Tsar's abdication, the formation of a provisional government led by the lawyer who speaks much but acts little, Kerensky, and the Bolshevik seizure of power through their control of the Palace of Winter, the Winter Palace. Each prediction proved accurate to historical detail. The revolutionary timeline concludes with Rasputin's disturbing prediction about the royal family's fate, stating they would be moved to the land of metal and stone, the Urals, where they would meet their appointed end in the house of the merchant. The Ipatiev house belonged to merchant Nikolai Ipatiev. Letter number 3. The Stalin Prophecy, 1910. One of the most disturbing documents in the collection is a letter dated September 1910, in which Rasputin predicts the rise of Joseph Stalin and describes the terror that would characterize Soviet rule with horrifying accuracy. The letter demonstrates supernatural knowledge of political developments that wouldn't occur for decades after Rasputin's death. Rasputin describes a man from the mountains of Georgia with a withered arm and eyes like winter, who would become more terrible than any czar that ever ruled Russia. His physical description of Stalin, including the Georgian origin and the withered arm from a childhood accident, matches historical records precisely, written 7 years before Stalin even joined Lenin's inner circle. The letter predicts that this Georgian would eliminate all rivals through purges that will consume millions of souls and create artificial famines that starve the fertile lands. Rasputin's descriptions of Stalin's purges and the Ukrainian Holodomor demonstrate impossible knowledge of events that wouldn't occur until the 1930s, written 2 decades earlier. Most chillingly, the letter predicts that Stalin would rule for 29 years and transform Russia into a prison where the innocent suffer and the guilty prosper. Stalin's actual rule lasted exactly 29 years, 1924 to 1953, and Rasputin's description of Soviet totalitarianism as a prison state proved devastatingly accurate. The Stalin prophecy concludes with a prediction that the Georgian dictator would die in fear and madness, abandoned by those he trusted, which matches historical accounts of Stalin's paranoid final years and his death alone and unattended in his dacha. Letter number 4. The Great War Predictions, 1912. A letter dated August 1912 contains Rasputin's detailed predictions about World War I, including specific military campaigns, casualty figures, and political consequences that proved accurate with supernatural precision. The letter demonstrates prophetic knowledge of global events that extended far beyond Russian borders. Rasputin predicts that a great war would begin when summer turns to autumn in the year of the double eagle's sorrow, 1914, referring to the double-headed eagle on the Austrian coat of arms and the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He describes the conflict as lasting for years and consuming 20 million souls, a remarkably accurate casualty estimate written 2 years before the war began. The letter includes specific predictions about Russian military disasters, naming battles and generals with precision that suggests supernatural military intelligence. Rasputin describes the disaster at the lakes, the Battle of the Masurian Lakes, and the retreat of the Winter Army, the Great Retreat of 1915, with tactical details that wouldn't be known until these events occurred. Most remarkably, the letter predicts that the war would end when the bear falls and the eagle is crippled, referring to the collapse of both Russian and German imperial power. Rasputin's description of how military failures would trigger revolution proved prophetic, as Russian defeats on the Eastern Front indeed contributed to the revolutionary fervor that toppled the Tsarist regime. The Great War prophecy concludes with a disturbing prediction about a second, even more devastating global conflict that would occur when the Georgian rules and the Austrian painter rises to power, an apparent reference to World War II occurring during Stalin's rule and Hitler's rise. Letter number 5. The Nuclear Vision, 1913. Perhaps the most scientifically impossible document in the collection is a letter dated November 1913, in which Rasputin describes weapons that sound unmistakably like nuclear bombs, predicting their development and use with accuracy that seems to violate the laws of physics regarding information transmission across time. Rasputin writes about weapons that split the smallest particles of matter and release the fire of the sun upon the earth. His description of nuclear fission, written 30 years before its scientific discovery, includes details about chain reactions and critical mass that wouldn't be understood until the 1940s. The letter predicts that these weapons would first be used in the land of the rising sun against two cities that will become altars of atomic fire. This clear reference to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, written 32 years before the atomic bombings, demonstrates prophetic knowledge that transcends normal understanding of temporal causation. Most disturbing is Rasputin's prediction that nuclear weapons would create a balance of terror where nations fear to fight because victory means death for all. His description of Cold War nuclear deterrent strategy, written decades before the concept existed, suggests access to future knowledge that conventional physics cannot explain. The nuclear vision concludes with a prophecy about atomic power being used to light cities and heal the sick, referring to nuclear energy and nuclear medicine applications that wouldn't be developed until decades after the letter was written. Letter number 6. The Digital Age Prophecy, 1915. The most technologically impossible document in the collection is a letter dated April 1915, in which Rasputin describes what can only be interpreted as the internet, computers, and digital communication technologies, with accuracy that seems to violate causality itself. Rasputin writes about thinking machines that will connect all people across the earth, and describes how knowledge will flow through invisible threads that carry voices and images instantly across vast distances. His description of global digital communication networks, written 60 years before computer technology existed, demonstrates prophetic sight that extends across more than a century. The letter predicts that these technologies would create a web of minds where all human knowledge becomes accessible to anyone, but warns that this connection would also enable watchers who observe every word and deed. Rasputin's description of internet surveillance and digital privacy concerns, written decades before electronic computers existed, suggests impossible temporal knowledge transmission. Most remarkably, the letter describes how these technologies would transform commerce, governance, and human relationships, but also create new forms of warfare fought with information rather than weapons. His predictions about cyber warfare, digital commerce, and social media's impact on human behavior demonstrate prophetic accuracy that challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of time and knowledge. Letter number 7. The Modern Russia Prophecy, 1916. The final letter in the collection, dated December 1916, just days before Rasputin's assassination, contains his predictions about modern Russia and events that are still unfolding in the 21st century. This letter demonstrates prophetic sight that extends beyond historical events to include contemporary political developments. Rasputin predicts that after 70 years of the Red Banner, a new Tsar will arise who speaks of restoring the glory of the eagles. His description of Vladimir Putin's rise to power and his nationalist rhetoric about restoring Russian greatness, written 70 years before Putin's presidency, demonstrates supernatural political foresight. The letter describes how this new leader would use the lifeblood of the earth, oil and natural gas, as weapons against Russia's enemies, and how he would reclaim lost territories through cleverness and force. Rasputin's predictions about Russia's energy diplomacy and territorial ambitions match contemporary geopolitical reality with disturbing precision. Most chillingly, the final letter predicts that Russia would face a great testing in the land of golden wheat, Ukraine, and that this conflict would awaken the old hatreds and alliances that slept since the Great Wars. Written over a century before the current conflict, this prophecy demonstrates prophetic sight that extends to events still unfolding today. The suppression campaign. Why these letters are hidden. The Russian government's response to the discovery of Rasputin's letters reveals the disturbing accuracy of his predictions through official attempts to suppress their content. Within weeks of their discovery, Russian authorities classified the documents as state secrets and began systematic campaigns to discredit their authenticity. Government historians were instructed to publish papers questioning the letters' provenance despite forensic evidence confirming their genuineness. Academic conferences examining the documents were canceled, and international researchers requesting access were denied visas or faced bureaucratic obstacles that prevented their studies. The intensity of suppression efforts actually validates the letters' authenticity by demonstrating official recognition that their content poses threats to contemporary Russian political narratives. If the predictions were false or irrelevant, they would require no suppression. The fact that they must be hidden proves their disturbing accuracy. Digital copies of the letters continue to circulate among international researchers despite official suppression attempts, ensuring that Rasputin's prophetic revelations cannot be permanently buried. The democratization of information technology makes complete censorship impossible, allowing these historical documents to reach global audiences despite governmental resistance. The implications. When prophecy becomes history, the authentication of Rasputin's letters and verification of their prophetic accuracy forces confrontation with disturbing questions about the nature of time, causality, and human consciousness. If individuals can access detailed knowledge of future events decades before they occur, fundamental assumptions about reality require revision. The letters suggest that historical events may follow predetermined patterns that can be perceived by individuals with appropriate spiritual sensitivity. This possibility challenges concepts of free will and historical contingency that underlie modern political and social systems. The prophetic accuracy demonstrated in Rasputin's letters validates similar claims made by other historical seers and suggests that authentic prophecy represents a genuine human capability rather than delusion or fraud. This recognition could fundamentally alter scientific understanding of consciousness and temporal perception. The continuing prophecies, predictions still unfolding. The most disturbing aspect of Rasputin's letters involves predictions that describe events still occurring or yet to occur in the 21st century. His contemporary prophecies suggest that his supernatural foresight extended across more than a century of future history. Modern events that match Rasputin's predictions with supernatural accuracy include the rise of authoritarian nationalism, the use of energy resources as geopolitical weapons, and conflicts over territorial claims that echo historical patterns. The continuing fulfillment of his prophecies establishes their ongoing relevance rather than mere historical curiosity. The letters contain additional predictions about future events that have not yet occurred, but describe developments in international relations, environmental challenges, and technological advances that could still prove accurate as they unfold in coming decades. The evidence is undeniable. Rasputin's lost letters, accidentally discovered after being hidden for over a century, contain prophetic predictions so accurate and detailed that they read like historical accounts written after the events occurred rather than prophecies written decades before. From the Romanov executions to Stalin's terror, from nuclear weapons to digital technology, from Soviet collapse to modern Russian politics, these documents demonstrate supernatural prophetic ability that challenges everything we understand about time, knowledge, and human consciousness. The systematic suppression of these letters by Russian authorities only validates their disturbing accuracy by proving that even contemporary governments recognize the threatening implications of authentic prophetic revelation. Don't let these prophetic truths remain buried. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and share this video with everyone who needs to see documented evidence that some individuals possess genuine access to future knowledge that transcends normal human limitations and reveals the predetermined patterns that govern historical development.